stay in our Zoom room where we are going to get this week's progress report from Superintendent of the Guam Department of Education, Jon Fernandez. Good morning, Jon.
Hi, good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jason, and the whole team. I was going to ask earlier this week. I said, hey, maybe this might be a week where we don't need to catch up. But then the governor issued her executive order. I said, I better get on and make sure I'm answering any questions or clarifying or anything. So, but that was good. I know there's a lot of, there's still a lot of concern about the public safety, health situation and what to expect after Christmas. But I'm glad the governor gave, at least some direction to us so that we could determine, how much further we could prepare and mobilize in the event that we do, end up starting school back to face-to-face instruction. We had targeted January 19th. So the executive order, which authorizes us beginning the 18th, is well timed and in coordination with the plans that we've been sharing with them. So we appreciate that. And before she made the decision, I know it's a big decision, but I did want to relay to her that allowing us to move forward and to reopen for face-to-face instruction doesn't mean that if the situation changes after Christmas and after New Year's that we're just going to barrel ahead and open up, no matter what. I think we all know that there are some risks inherent in having these celebrations happening during Christmas and New Year's. And if people don't follow the rules, there's a risk that we may see higher cases and higher positive results out there. So, that start date of that we're planning for on the 19th gives us that 14-day period, between Christmas and New Year's and the start of face-to-face instruction to see whether the numbers do change and whether, we start heading in a different direction in terms of the public health situation. So we'll continue to monitor it. And we'll continue to make sure that safety is our primary concern and priority. But this gives us the opportunity to just make sure that we're planning, preparing for that possibility of and that plan to reopen for face-to-face instruction. I know that last time we talked, we gave an indication that, to the public about where we stood with the number of students coming back, and so it's a low number. And so right now our schools are orienting themselves around the fact that we have, 70-80% of our kids are still doing distance learning, right? So we've got to make sure we put a lot of our effort and attention there and then accommodate the face-to-face instruction for those who want to come to school. So, when we start off, it's going to be low numbers. And it's going to be, people are going to say, well, is it worth opening if it's just going to be 20%, 30% of your students there? But to us, it represents a starting point. For us, it represents an opportunity to see how the safety protocols work. If there need to be adjustments, we have the opportunity to make those adjustments because we'll see, what students do when they come in and how they interact. And, we may be anticipating one behavior and they say, well, we're going to go, where do we hang out during this time? And, it's going to give us a chance to work those details out without having the pressure of so many students there at once. So we're looking forward to, continuing that preparation. We do expect all of our teachers and our staff to be back at school on the 4th to begin the trainings and to be, to be able to prepare for the start of the school. And the schools are working out their schedules for both training and for the orientations that we hope we're able to do for students and parents to kind of introduce them to the campus, reintroduce them to the campus, and kind of explain what we're doing. So that'll give us that time. And then on the 19th will be the first day of school. So we're working with our buses to finalize the schedules. With DPW, we're working with our food services again to nail down those schedules. And so we had hoped typically during this Christmas break things are a little slower, but the team is really hard at work. So even Christmas Eve and of course this Thursday, New Year's Eve, I offered to the team, I said, hey, there's a meeting that we normally have, but I'm open to pushing that off until next week. And everybody insists that we have to have it, make sure that we're ready to go. So we're working hard to make sure that we're ready. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy to take any questions, anything else that the public might be interested in hearing about Again, lots of things moving, and we're continuing all the efforts on all models of learning, trying to make sure that we're able to support all models. I guess the only other thing I would mention is that home visitations. Remember, we talked about, there are students out there that we just have been unable to reach. So we were just very glad to see in this executive order the governor making an explicit authorization for social service workers, which would include our social workers and outreach teams, to be able to conduct those home visits, because we really look forward to getting out into those areas where we know there may be kids who are not participating in school, checking on them, seeing how they're doing, and maybe use that opportunity to register them, but also get them some supplies that might be needed, to kind of help them in that transition back to school. So it really has been frustrating to see that there are 500 students that we just couldn't do much except to wait until we were able to go out. So our team's meeting today to put together their mobilization plan, but we look forward to reconnecting those students as well, as that was one of our major concerns. And then the other question that wasn't addressed is that I think this will probably be a later discussion, but we had talked about earlier our plans for interscholastic high school sports. So that is a plan, that's a proposal that we put out there. At this point, the governor has not yet authorized us to move forward, but we will continue that discussion, because I know that many of our families, that'll be the next question after return to face-to-face instruction, whether there'll be sports season. So we'll continue to work with the governor and public health to determine when she feels ready to authorize that activity.
Yeah, I can't remember if we covered this last week, or a decision was made about the schedules for the students, because I thought it was going to be like a staggered kind of schedule. But because the numbers were so low, will everybody be on the same schedule when they return, for those who want to return to face-to-face?
Yeah, we're going to be, so we're doing, we are working to finalize schedules, and it'll probably be something that gets released early next week regarding, the online, hard copy and face-to-face. Before, this past semester, we really left a lot to the schools to help organize their, stakeholders, their students, their, teachers, in a way that they could support, these efforts. Now we're looking at more structure and more alignment, because we have face-to-face instruction. We want to make sure that the buses are also, also understand, what days we might not have any class. On Friday, we're still planning to be an intervention day and for distribution. So we wanted to make sure we had all those things aligned. And so when we got the school administrators and teams together, they started to work on that alignment of how to, of across the district, deciding on what days would be online, what days would be face-to-face. And we're trying to nail down that schedule, hopefully by the end of today or tomorrow. What that means is that because of the numbers of students, schools have decided that they can actually run 2 groups instead of 3 groups. And so that, that affects the scheduling and affects the numbers that we can accept. So instead of having 3 cohorts, there are something, I think many schools are going to go to 2 cohorts, and that'll affect the schedule, for students. So again, I hope to have that announced by early next week. We are waiting. We do have, early next week, we are going to be welcoming our returning and newly elected board members. So, as we try to put out this information, we're going to go, we have a swearing in scheduled, and then we're going to want to brief the entire board before we do anything further, just to make sure they have an opportunity to catch up and have input into those decisions. And then we will, announce them. So there's a lot going on, in the middle of all the planning too. So hopefully by early next week, the final schedules will be released so that students understand what they need to be doing.
Mm-hmm. What about, we've heard about the discussions regarding the sports, but what about other extracurricular, activities like, say, ROTC, different clubs that students participate in? What's being discussed about those kinds of things?
So, a lot of those things are handled at the school level. So,
Okay.
We haven't really issued a lot of district level guidance unless it's been needed. So for ROTC, a lot of, just like every other class, a lot that's gone on virtually, in terms of, just virtual instruction. They haven't been able to do, group activities, physical activities. We just heard from the Air Force ROTC unit, the national unit, national office, that they've implemented a completely online curriculum that's now accessible for the Air Force ROTC students. So a lot of changes and adjustments going on that we're just trying to keep up with. But that was interesting to see. They had cataloged all their resources and put them online and said, okay, we're prepared for a full virtual environment if that's what's needed. So we'll see how that works in those particular activities. A lot of clubs actually have been already, if they have the leadership and the motivation, have been operating already. So you will see clubs that are having meetings and just at least staying in communication. But a lot of you haven't been able to do a lot of activities or any fundraising with that. We've seen our choirs. I don't know if you've happened to catch. We have our school choirs. Some of them are just going online and doing their online performances, which is kind of great. It's really, I have to applaud them. It's really difficult. I've never done Zoom. We just went through like a Zoom novena with the family, and trying to do everything, and there's all that lagging, and everyone's singing.
Yes, we definitely tried that.
So to see that these choirs are going on and working through that was pretty amazing. So I think that for the most part, the clubs, the extracurricular activities are actually working to do what they can on their own. There isn't a lot of district level guidance and an ability to really push forward some of these activities that require in-person meetings and so forth. That hasn't really been, we haven't been able to do that. As we haven't been able to do any after school programs or other things that we would normally do when we return to face-to-face. So when we return to face-to-face instruction, that might be the next question we get from parents. Will there be an Aspire program after school? And the answer is not at this time. We're really not able to do that. We're trying to do these one step at a time. Yeah. So get everyone back to face-to-face. We'll have to return them home and then, focus on the distance learning models and other virtual methods of communication with our students.
Are you able to kind of just provide a kind of walk through when, especially for the little kids, and so their parents are aware, what to expect January 19th when they bring their child into the school? Are they going to, are they going to have to wear masks, face shields? Are they going to sanitize their hand, get their temperature checked? How does this all work?
So there are a lot of things that are going to be worked out school by school, just in terms of some of the details of where you drop your child off, if you're dropping your child, and of course limiting the parents being on campus for any prolonged period of time. So some of that information we put forth because every school is going to have to manage traffic in and out of the school and try to minimize the traffic. But they should certainly expect the temperature checks. They should certainly expect, we are requiring face masks. So right now we're looking at ways to distribute face masks ahead of time. So, there may be opportunities during orientation to get the face masks out. Otherwise, we're going to ask them to have face masks when they come to school or distribute it to them when they get there. And then there's going to be, of course, a lot of, reinforcement of the hygienic practices of washing hands and hand sanitizing when they come to class and so forth. So again, a lot of this gets customized at the school level based on, the way the buses come in, the way the cars drop off their children. But there will be a lot of focus in those first days, especially with the low numbers of children, that if we want everyone to be patient, we're going to have to go through these steps, and then we'll be able to get them to their classrooms. So there won't be a lot of milling around and playing outside. We're going to want to get them into their classroom situated, hands washed, hand sanitized, face masks, and so forth. So again, all the schools have their plans, prepared. We actually submitted them to Public Health for their review. And then I also believe that Public Health will be out and about at the schools. And we welcome it for them to come in and inspect and make sure that if they have any suggestions or concerns or issues, that they're able to also provide us that input so we can make those adjustments quickly.
And actually, there's a good point that somebody just brought up regarding students without masks upon entry to the bus is a huge risk. Is that kind of the reason why you don't want to get these masks out to students before school starts? And do you know what the protocols are for DPW when the kids get onto the bus?
So we're working with DPW to support them, and they are not prepared long term to provide masks to the students. Every day who are coming on the bus. So the idea is they should have their masks already. And if the masks are being distributed, from the school, we will definitely will provide them those masks. So that's kind of what we're looking at and how we can maybe support an early or pre-distribution of the masks where it's possible. The other thing we're doing is we're looking at our inventory, and we're prepared to support DPW with hand sanitizers and a supply of face masks. I do think DPW also has a short-term supply of face masks that are available, but these would be for those who might have forgotten or their faces might have broken, while they're waiting for the bus. So we are preparing for that contingency. We don't want them necessarily to just get on the bus on that first day without any mask. The requirement is to have a mask, but because DPW is not, really prepared to do this long term, we're just looking at how we can support them through the early weeks with their supply and our supply of masks, and then we'll see how it goes. We want to make sure that the parents also reinforce that behavior, and with their kids, to make sure your masks are on when you enter the bus. So we'll continue to work on that. But that is part of our plan.
Right.
We're also planning to have hand sanitizers on the buses.
What about temperature checks?
We're looking at the options for the buses, but we obviously want it mounted at the very least. So that we don't want the bus drivers to have to go manually hand sanitize all the kids, but they will be able to at least have hand sanitizer available on the buses. And then in between the bus pickups and drop-offs, before they go off for their next round, our understanding is that they have I believe it's an electrostatic sprayer that they can go quickly through the bus to sanitize and disinfect the bus before they start off on their next round. So we're talking through the details with them, making sure we're all comfortable with the practices and protocols, especially for those early the first couple of weeks of school, where we're trying to work out all the details and seeing which buses happen to have more kids than expected, and which have less, and try to make the adjustments as needed.
Mm-hmm. We have another question. How will the cafeteria be set up for kids to have lunch?
So there will be again, low numbers of kids. There are schools that are planning that used to have one school lunch period that are now going to divide those lunch periods to make sure there's adequate opportunity for physical distancing. And the way they're orienting them, of course, is they're not going to be sitting across from each other. They're doing the seating arrangement so they're able to maintain that physical distancing and to get kids in and out of the cafeteria as efficiently as possible. And then, of course, sanitizing the tables and chairs in between, the servings. So I guess I know some schools are doing things on their own by adding additional, dividers and other things as they're comfortable with. But for the most part, we're looking at seating arrangement and minimizing the number of kids who are in the cafeteria at any one time, and working through that physical distancing to ensure that kids, are not going to be face to face and, congregated in ways that are not safe in the cafeteria. So what we're working out, of course, is because we're now looking at multiple school lunch periods versus, those who are operating with fewer, obviously have to have staff in there to clean up and sanitize in between the kids getting their meals and sitting back at those tables.
Mm-hmm. Another question. Is there a disciplinary action for those students who refuse to follow protocol in school campus?
There is, yes, it would still follow the same disciplinary rules. Right? So those are requirements, those are school requirements, and parents and students are going to need to be aware. And then, of course, through progressive discipline, the way we would normally handle any disciplinary actions, we would definitely pursue the same with those who refuse to abide by the protocols. Now, of course, there are some, children who, for one reason or another, have difficulty, with the procedures, whether it's a medical issue, whether it's, behavioral issue that we have to work out case by case. But for the most part, if you're just simply ignoring and not following instructions, we would then have to take action the way we would for other behavioral issues, definitely involving the parents, and then, starting there and then looking at other ways to change that behavior.
Mhm. What about, we've had some of the private schools on, and they've kind of
Mhm.
brought up issues about how GDOE provides, some money to them, I guess, in terms of PPEs and things like that. Have they received whatever it is they were supposed to receive from
Well,
GDOE?
yeah, so every time that happens and they're on the show or your show or any other show, I get calls right immediately afterwards that say, "What are you guys doing? And how come the private schools are getting it?" Every time I check in with our, our staff that are working directly with them, I say, you please let me know what they're missing. And it turns out that, as far as I know, everything that was supposed to be delivered has been delivered to them. And I think the only issues at this particular point have to do with last second changes that they've made to their requests for supplies that then have to go through the process of being reapproved and procured again. So I understand that that's not, there are several private schools that changed their requests for supplies from one, supply to another. That forces us to go back and redo make sure that it's allowable, and then go back to the process of procuring those supplies. So that's the only thing. So I know that our team met with the Catholic schools and private schools this past, I think I think yesterday, and really clarified the situation to make sure that there was a clarity about what was being requested and what is outstanding. And then I believe there will be separate procurement meetings that will be held with the private schools if there's any question or issues that are related to, their particular request. I've sat in. I hold 2 meetings a week on procurement with the team to go through everything that is being requested, from the time a requisition is entered to a time a purchase order is issued and goods and supplies are distributed. And so it's not an easy process. We can't just simply go out and purchase goods and supplies where we want to. There has to be, solicitation of quotes. We typically have to get 3 quotes in order for us to move forward. So otherwise, it faces a lot of scrutiny from our federal, agency. So there's a lot of process involved. But as far as I'm concerned, I think the PPEs that are required have all been addressed. There are some outstanding items that are still in process that are going to be distributed and installed. Those are due to supply issues in terms of the vendors being able to supply and bring those materials in. So things like our hand washing stations, water bottle filling stations, those are not necessarily non-negotiables. I mean, we can operate without them, but we know that those are still coming in, and being delivered. And once they're here, we'll install them, at the schools that have requested them. So we know there are still things moving. But as far as any delays, I've checked with our team, and every time I hear a complaint, we go back and try to make sure. I just haven't had any clarity about what has not been delivered that should have been. As far as I know, everything's been delivered, and it's just for some of the last minute changes that have taken place that need to be adjusted, approved, and then moved through the procurement process as soon as we can.
Okay. It might have been in the release that was sent out on reopening. I wanted to ask about the uniform policy for the students that are returning.
Right. So uniform policy is waived for this year, so that means that it's not required. Now, of course, we welcome students who wear their uniforms, and in many cases, it's probably the most convenient option for those who have uniforms. We are working to provide additional supports for uniforms for those who may need that support. So that typically happens through our social workers and our outreach offices, outreach office to see when that support might be needed. But otherwise, it's not a requirement. So nobody will be disciplined for failing to wear a uniform. There will be dress codes. So, there will be requirements that you can't wear, certain kinds of clothing on campus, or,
No spaghetti
certain
straps.
clothing or spaghetti straps, or right. There'll be a dress code. So you can't just wear anything. But for this year, I know the board didn't want to impose an additional, financial burden on families just to come back to school. We wanted our kids back in school as soon as possible. So that'll be waived for the rest of this year.
Okay. And I guess just finally, we just got the release on school meal distribution. It resumes, I think, today, right? Today's the 30th.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we're trying to work. Yeah, trying to get our distributions managed, for now and then into the new year. And once we start back, we plan to continue the school meal distributions, the non-perishable items every Friday. So that will continue, I believe, to the rest of the school year, where we have authority to do that. The only difference now is that those who go face to face, when they come to school, they will have the hot meal option at school. So that would be the typical school breakfast and lunch that gets served in the cafeteria. So we do have to provide students who attend face-to-face instruction to have their cafeteria meals. But for those who are on distance learning, or actually all the students, right? Because the face-to-face students are not going to be there every single day. They're all eligible to come in on Friday to pick up food supplies, for the week, the way we've been doing the past several months. So Fridays, we still plan to reserve that for an opportunity to continue that support to our students.
All right. Well, thanks, Jon, for the weekly update. We've been asking on our social media, what is the biggest lesson you learned in 2020? So let me ask you that. What is the biggest lesson you learned?
The biggest lesson learned in 2020, gosh, I mean, there's so many, but I would have to say that, in times of crisis like this, communication is just critical, and being visible and being transparent is just critical, because I think there's been so much opportunity, so many ways to be confused and to get the wrong kind of information, and to about important issues like your health, and like ways to protect your health, and school openings, and economic issues here and there that are really it's easy to be anxious and uncertain, and to be overwhelmed. So it really helps when you're able to get good, solid information you can rely on. And I think the thing for us as a department was that whether it's good news, bad news, meeting, whether it's good news or bad news, let the people know what they need to know. Let them make decisions that they need to make, but give them good information they can rely on. So that when they come to you later and as you try to manage through the crisis, they're not second guessing, what you're doing, and not second guessing the fact that we do have the interests of our students and employees at heart. And what we're trying to do is really in their interest. So I think that's the biggest issue. Otherwise, everything else, a lot to do about being flexible, adaptable, and really being prepared for anything this year. So I think we've been able to do that. But ultimately, we do hope that people do have the confidence in the decisions that are being made, because we did our best to get input and to share our thought process all along the way, and including the opportunities to do this every week has really been helpful to us. So I want to thank you for that.
No, thank you. You're right. People need to know what's going on, what to expect, and what's coming in the future. So thank you so much, Jon. Happy New Year to you and the family.
Happy New Year.
All right. We'll see you
next year.
Yeah, see you next year. All right. Stay tuned, everybody. We will have more on the link coming up. Jason's going to get lit.